Welcome, everyone. That was quite cool. Welcome to this talk about Next and my experience in using it, building a state-of-the-art e-commerce web site in Fullstack React. Super quickly about me, Sebastian. I'm a Renaissance engineer, meaning I do everything, and including tech leadership at a company called Northbridge. 20 years in tech, software engineering leadership, a lot of focus on Microsoft, on the Microsoft ecosystem with .NET, Azure, lots of web technologies, TypeScript, React, Vue, all the big frameworks, including my favorite jQuery. And there's a bug on CoderRank.io that ranks me #1 in .NET, C# and TypeScript, so I hope they don't fix that bug. But if there's one thing you remember about me, FIFA, very old version as you can see, on purpose. I was actually in the game credits for audio and support for 2004. So, what I will take you through in this talk is a story basically about how I fell in love with web development by using Next.js. Sometimes you start either privately or with your friends or at work or whatever. I got a brilliant product idea, and you describe it, and everyone's like, yes, let's get started. We just need to set up the web project, and then you run into this problem. Okay, there's a lot of things to think about. The very basic thing, okay, which front-end framework should we use? Nowadays, that's quite a nice problem to have. Whatever framework you choose, you're very well off. They can do everything, all of them. But yeah, React is the most popular one. So if you pick that, you have a sure bet if you're unsure. But then comes the next choice. Okay, framework. Okay, build tool, Webpack, of course. Everyone loves Webpack who's worked with it. But there's a lot of other things to choose from. And then you go to the next step, okay, routing. How will I do routing in my React app? And there's okay, React router. The name says pick me because I am a React router. But there's a lot of other things. If you search for React routing on NPM, the results just max out. Not saying that they're all routers, but it's there's a lot of things to think about. There's a list of everything. Oh, what should I pick? What should I choose? And you're back in this swamp. But with Next, you actually get over that initial complexity by getting a one terminal command of making all those choices and just get started, get full productivity directly from Next. So my experience started with at a company where someone who's really good at web said, let's use React to build our e-commerce website. And I came from a .NET background, statically generated backend code. And I was like, this is insane. How can you pick React for such a problem? I was super curious, okay, explain more. Because e-com websites is a perfect example of a complex scenario where you have at one end you need a very static site that produces a website statically so that search engines can pick it up, so it's predictable, you know what's in the HTML, but you also so a blog is an example of a perfect static site that you can just pre-render. And if you need a sort of a native app, very responsive dynamic app, you have that at one end. But the e-commerce sort of stretches this whole spectrum because you need the static generation, but you need very interactive behavior on the website as well. So on an e-commerce website, you need, like I said, the server-side rendering for performance. You need search engine optimization, but you also need the interactive components, you need the modern web experience. You can't just have static HTML. You need to add to cart, add comments, add reviews. You need the lovely cookie consent. You can close that one quickly. And other modern web best practices like bundling and stuff like that. So e-commerce, everyone has been at one, Amazon or whatever. You have a list of items, you have some articles, you have some navigation, you usually have your cart up in the corner, and you usually want to enable the user to add to cart very quickly. You want to give them that option so they don't have to look for that call to action. And a classic React single page application basically started with that you have a server, it might be running .NET, Java, Spring, I guess that logo is, PHP or whatever. And you send that to the user's client, and you basically just did this, like, here's your HTML, and you have a div that says this is the app. You send down the React framework, you send down your app, and the client takes care of everything. It sort of unfolds what you say your app is in the browser with the React magic. Good emoji. So the downsides of going this way was sort of like there are SEO challenges. Search engines have gotten better, but it's still like not perfect. You get one large app download plus the React library directly before you even see anything. If you're deep in a state of like navigation deep down, it could be very janky where things jump around and restore its state. The URLs don't really like map to predictable content or parts of the website or app. There's security concerns, again, with like a page can show up and then be blocked by auth, like, oh, you're not logged in, but you saw all the content. So that's not a great experience. I've seen that actually happen, which is crazy. Like secret, sensitive stuff is just like visibly hidden. It's still in the code. Not great. So as an example, this is something that was popular a few years ago. It's called or the style is called a Chinese super app, meaning you have everything in there. So imagine you like go to one section, you have another tab, and you're under a subsection, and you're under the comments. Like all of those are like React states, but you want to be able to sort of get back to that state and not unfold all of those things. And that's sort of the goal that we're moving towards. Analytics and tracking is also, ad blockers can sort of ruin that analytics experience. So if you think you're tracking the user, you might not be tracking all the users like you can when you do a server-side solutions. Also, if the client doesn't have any JavaScript or limited, it's completely broken because it cannot run the React in the client. So what we wanted was the React developer experience. Like we really like the model. We bought into React and the JSX model in the e-commerce building team. We like the declarative syntax. You can get a good overview of what parts of the code means. You have the HTML, JavaScript-like syntax. You have the inline logic, so you can see, okay, the logic lives next to a component. Dynamic rendering, and it's component-based, composable, reusable components, rich ecosystem, biggest framework, so it has the most ready-made components, probably. And you have the one-directional data flow, which I initially thought was super stupid with React, but now I see that simplicity is maybe the charm of React. Makes it easier to understand the source data and the rich tooling, everything you get with React. Fast refresh, hot module reload, stuff like that. And compile time optimization. So you want the React developer experience that we've had with like old spas, but you also want the predictability of when you go to a URL that you get actually the content and the HTML and the navigation that you think you are under. Like if you're deeply nested in the app, you want to be able to press F5 and the same content actually pops up. It's not like rebuilding a lot of state and unfolding the page. So we know that React JSX, it sort of unfolds. You have a very rich language where you can say like, okay, here we have a product ratings object that we conditionally, we don't even show it to the user if there are no ratings. Like we just hide that, or we can show some fallback, and in the browser itself sort of decodes this and says, okay, I include the image, I include the description, but I skip the ratings because there were no ratings. So everything is happening in the browser. And this is where the server-side rendering of React sort of enters. So the browsers, they can run React and JavaScript predictably across browsers. It's very, very standard. You know what you're getting. There's no real big bugs between the browsers. So if we want to run the React and JavaScript functionality on the server side, you sort of have to think like, okay, so if I'm a .NET developer or a Java or PHP, like how do I get the full functionality that runs in my browser for a page that fetches data and does conditionals? How do I get my server to sort of run this in a predictable way? Do I trust, the Java version of V8 to be the same as the browser? But there is actually a solution to that, and that's why Next is running on Node, which is like identical to what happens in the browser. So it becomes a little bit blurry because the server will render the same thing that the browser renders. So you need to know in which mode you are. But we come more to that. But it gives a certainty to that you can understand that the React code is running in Node predictably the same way it would do in a browser. So the server-side rendered React, same exact code with the conditional product rating. It will actually directly render that component on the server, see what the output is in a predictable way, and then send the result to the client or to the browser instead of letting the browser interpret the code inline. So, in a world of turnkey, full-stack React development, what is next? Like, what's the scope of Next? Well, at the base, we have React, so that's sort of ensuring you can use everything that you do in React. The components translate across everything, so you know that you have that core. You can. We wrote a separate library that didn't even know about Next for a lot of our components. You don't need to lock yourself into Next so much, but there is a layer of Next.js around React. So you have the server-side components, you have the routing, middleware, image optimizations, things that are nice to not, at least initially, have to take a choice around. You just get it out of the box. Bundle optimizations and things like that. So in React, there are a built-in concept of actions, which the server actions then is built on. So Next is trying to use as much as possible the cache in React. Next uses that for deduplication, the standard suspense component. Next leverages that behind the scenes to do its loading suspense automatic pattern that we will see more later. So everything is trying to be built on top of React so that the layer of Next is sort of kept minimal, but still very predictive. So on the side for everything, React and Next, you have TypeScript, React compiler, fast refresh, all of those good things that come with this stack. So React actually deprecated their create React app npm package, and now it's pointing towards the next create next app as the standard. So you're in safe hands. So all you need to do is run npx create next app at latest, and then you get everything working. You get a folder that you can start working with the files and start building. You get some options. The defaults are usually really good, so just follow those. One of the sort of buy-ins you do, but a lot of other frameworks have very similar routing as Next, is the routing part, because it's very it's Next specific, but it's a lot of other frameworks have it too. But it's good to know that this is a Next specific thing. They use file-based routing. They call it app router, where you basically have the key files are the layout, which is the shared layout that all pages use, and then you have the page TSX in different subfolders to have the routing. So the layout file is like what you're used to. It's just the outer HTML shell. You link in your CSS file, and then you use the regular React component of drilling down the children. So the page content will be inside the children component that comes in as argument. So everything is just standard React. And in the page, we find something like this. You have a very common pattern is just you get the data from somewhere with a fetch, and then you put that data in your in your page template, and then you know that the outer shell comes from the layout. There are URL conventions, so if you put under the app folder in like an about contact a page, then the URL will be about contact. So it's very, very predictable. You get a lot of tabs in VS Code that says page.tsx. You get some hints, but it can get messy after a while. So back to the e-commerce site. Here's the products page, and basically the outer shell is then the navigation and the footer and the logo, and the yellow part now, does it look good? Yeah, is what's in the page TSX, just so you get a feeling, so you can have sub layouts as well in different sections. So one very powerful thing, and it's been back and forth for a few versions, is the client-side navigation in Next, where you use a link, a Next specific component called a link. What it does is you can have different settings to flag a link that it will pre-fetch if you hover over it or if it's just in the viewport. What it does basically is pre-load certain links, so that when you click that link, it's actually instant, like the page comes up directly. The interfacing is like super duper quick because of this, but also you load some extra data, so it's good to know that you maybe should not load your whole navigation tree for every user if you have an e-commerce website. Let's skip the demo, sorry. So the data fetching pattern, you do some server-side data fetching using the regular standard fetch that is supported in the browser and on the server on Node. It caches the data across users. So if you do it client-side, you can only cache for the current user, but if you do it server-side, it will actually be able to cache the data across users. So if you have categories for products, you know that this will be stable for a while, and you can cache it. You don't need to fetch it for every user every time. And there's no CORS restriction because it's server to server. You can send any custom headers. That's a big upside. Secure auth with protected secrets that don't leak out to the client code in the browser. You have file system access, secure database connections, things like that. So, but you still also can do the client-side fetching. So it's not a limitation, but the default is server-side. So this is the fetch in the browser works as always with React. Regular React flow, nothing changed there. So if we look at an example, here we have a route that says like the ID of the product, for instance. You can use that ID, take that from the parameters, and then go to a database, get the product. If it's not found, return not found. Otherwise, populate your components. So yeah, we'll get to that later. But you can also show loading states because of this, and you can pass the data down to the client components from the page. That's a very common pattern. And you see the generated HTML. So everything we looked at so far has generated server-side generated HTML. So none of this has been done in the browser. All of the HTML tags have come from the server to the user directly. Crazy. So interactivity we need, and that is not really possible if you do everything server-side rendered. So you have some stuff like navigating, drop-downs, or your cart, or whatever interactive components you have, or changing colors to see the preview and adding quantity to cart. All of those need to be interactive. So then we need to go into client-side mode. So default is server, and then you actively say, okay, now I know what I'm doing. I'm going into client-side mode. And that sort of means like hook in React here, like go into old React mode in the client, like run this in the browser. So server-side components, they don't run React in the browser. So if you never go into client mode, you can have no React sent to the client. It's all just done on the server. So state handling, state and event handling and browser APIs, they're not available because you're on the server. So Next cannot use that. But you can nest server-side and client-side components freely, like in multiple layers. It handles all of that. And the server side are rendered on the server, like I said, and it's the client side are actually also rendered once on the server. So the server does it once, sends it down to the client. It renders it client side and says, do they look the same? Otherwise, something probably has broken. So it's quite intuitive. And server side should be used to ensure you're not leaking secret content, mainly, and also speed. So I've seen solutions sort of like this, where it's like it's logged in, secret content, otherwise public content, and you can just do like view source in React and see the secrets. So that's not great. So let's look at how the interactive client-side code sort of looks like. What you do, hate it or love it, you start with the use client on top of the file, and that sort of signals like from here on, this file signals React that I'm a client-side React component. So render me once on the server and then render me in the client. And you can use the use state from React, everything is there. You can send down from the page, like is this object in the cart or wherever you want to handle that. You can handle on click, everything is client side. So if you need that kind of functionality, you need to say this component is client side. Another good thing you get out of the box is API routing. It's very similar to page routing. You have the same structure where the folders decide the URL. So here we have API products ID, and the get route would be API products 1, 2, 3, and the code is a little bit different but very similar, where you just have like any node framework for server-side code, where you can get stuff from the parameters and you can send data securely on the server and respond with a JSON, for instance. But since we're living in a JavaScript application, this will be a lot of left-hand, right-hand. So if you have like, I want to update a product, you know you have a chunk of code that you would put in an API route that you would then point to with a fetch manually. So why would you want to, like, if you don't have to wire that up, why would you? So that's where server actions come in, and it sort of skips this left-hand, right-hand API routes where you build the route and then you point to it with a URL and then you update the URL and the fetch breaks. So it creates, these are functions that you tag in a certain way, and then it creates these public post HTTP endpoints that Next uses behind the scenes. So what you do is put the use server directive in your code, and then the Next framework knows, okay, I will make a public endpoint either from the function you put it on or on the whole module, which means that all the exported functions will be accessible through server actions. And it can be accessed through both client-side or server-side components. Yeah, it can actually be executed like in forms, in use effect, third-party libraries, event handlers, wherever, your own libraries, wherever. So it's very powerful. But it's basically syntactical sugar. So if we have the add to cart, for instance, we have the people, it's a convention, it's not a must, but people put server actions in actions folder. You can put it however you want. You can name the file or the function, something to indicate that there's an action. So if we have that server action that actually does something complex in the background, this add to cart action will then be exposed as a post endpoint that Next uses behind the scenes. You don't have to configure it yourself. So in the add to cart, for instance, you can have on click, you call the add to cart action, which did everything that maybe the API route would do otherwise. So it's very good. You can even share code, but it's a very powerful way to not have to do the left hand, right hand for API routes. Caching, I've been through Next.js 13, 14, 15, and now 16, and caching has been back and forth a lot. So they try to be like, oh, we're going to be super smart for you and give you a very smart solution, and a lot of things were not really intuitive, so things have been going back and forth. I find that version 16, we'll get to that later, I think they nailed it. We'll see. I think it's individual taste, but I see how the patterns have gone for them to develop step by step and be like, okay, this doesn't work, let's throw this out the window, basically. So the core concepts that Next tries to do is like it tries to pre-render and cache all HTML on all routes. And one thing that I was not used to coming from .NET is like a pattern called stale while revalidate, and that means that in other frameworks, when a cache runs out, the code stops and updates the cache because it says like, okay, this item has run out, so I need to get a new version. What Next tries to do is say, okay, this is old, but it's within reason, so I will give you the old stuff, but I will load a new version of the thing that needs to be cached again in the background. And that was like a killer for us to pre-generate pages for our ecom. There's also request memoization included, so if multiple components is calling the same URL, Next magically, but not so magically, behind the scenes sort of streamlines all of those into one call, so it handles those kind of things. There's persistent cache, like I said, on the server, not in people's individual browsers. You can have time-based caching. It can be tagged, so it can be individually revalidated. So if you have a product with ID 123, you update it somewhere in your product system, you can send a signal to say, okay, I want all of this to be reloaded. And that's called revalidation, so cache busting on tags. Or by path and by key, exactly. So a very common way up until Next 16, I would say, is to be a little bit Next specific configuration in your fetch, where you specify the revalidate time, like how long should I serve this cached version, and when should I start looking for the new version if someone calls this data, and you can put in the tags. The reason I kept this in is that a lot of people are still running in Next, I would say 14 and 15, possibly 13. In 16 this changes, we will look at that as well, but this is sort of the normal way for a few versions now of Next. So yeah, the revalidation, you can just say like, okay, I want everything under the URL that Next exposes, like, so you would invalidate product/123, but also product123/comments or reviews or whatever. And by key, be very specific. If you tag, like you see in the data caching, we're tagging it product123, then it will say, okay, everything that's tagged 123, throw that out. So, like I said, up until Next 16, the unstable cache was the way to do things. You wrapped your own function with the unstable cache. You gave it some ID for cache key that resulted in some errors in some cases where there were duplicate IDs and people got very weird results. So this will or is being replaced with use cache in Next 16. We'll look more at that. But for on the e-commerce sort of topic again, where it's sort of extremely useful technologies built into Next. One of those is static site generation, where you can actually generate the HTML content at build time. So it like lays on the disk. So if you have your top 50 or 100 products, you can actually build those. It doesn't need to be generated the first time you go to those pages, but it's actually pre-generated. But it also gets updated if it gets stale, if the data gets stale. And that enables CDN caching, so you can send out the pages to different CDNs. And by default, pages without data fetching are server-side pre-generated. This is also improved in Next.16, as we will see. Yeah, and there's many different things that you can tweak, like config can force the first visit of a page to trigger server-side generation. Yeah, what you do is actually basically on a page, there's a magic function called generate static params, where you give, let's say in this pattern, does it show? Yeah, good. So we have the slug for a product that would be, 1, 2, 3, or the name of the product. If you just return an array of these slugs, like let's say 10 or 100, at build time, Next will see this generate static params and create all of those pages. So it's actually extremely simple to see. There's no separate build script. Here's another super cool feature in Next that is very useful for this sort of like e-commerce scenario where you have the incremental static regeneration. I think I explained it earlier, but you generate the page. So we see you get the data from a database, and you generate version 1 of the page, and you keep serving that version for, let's say, 1 minute in this example. And then when you cross that cache deadline, so the 1 minute cache, you will keep returning the stale page, the first version, but in the background, the version 2 will be generated and update the cache, and then from then on, when that's done, everyone will get version 2, and then that just continues. And yeah, usually these kind of cache solutions sort of break at the 60-second mark, and the first person who hits the stale page needs to wait for the step of getting or building version 2, which is for a quickly responsive page a nightmare. So back to the e-commerce. So here we have things that are maybe not critical for, like, if you want to get the page up quickly, you want to show everything, but except for maybe these kind of things like the price or the review, because that's very important that is very up to date, especially the price. The reviews can lag behind a little bit. The add to cart, you really want to see like how many things do I have in my cart, and your own cart. So one thing that Next supports is something called loading and streaming. I don't know why this repeated, but it's the same thing. Okay, interesting. So what that allows Next to do is to show content as fast as possible. So we could see like the outer shell that is very predictable. You know what's there, but you want some parts that are more dynamic. So what it enables is, like I said, to stream the outer shell, or give you the outer shell and then start streaming the different components from the server side when they're ready. It allows a pattern where you can show a fallback during the loading, and it uses the React suspense component behind the scenes, so there's nothing like Next-specific magic. You can do that. You can enable this in a manual or sort of like automatic way that we'll look at, either through the suspense component, like in a traditional React way, or through a Next convention. So first, the suspense component, it's built into React. You have your product reviews, that little component. You have your page. You get the overall data for the product, the title and description. But then you can have a suspense boundary around the product reviews that sort of indicates that this component is loading on its own. Maybe don't do the p tag with loading reviews, but something nicer. But you get the concept. It allows this sort of fallback component that can be anything while the content of this suspense component is loading data. Next tries to abstract that on a page level. So you can put in like a file called loading.tsx next to your page, and what actually happens behind the scene is that Next does this lifting of your page and puts it inside a suspense with the fallback of this loading component. So it's hiding that magic, but it's still very basic. Exactly. So, yes, this hooks into what is actually, like there are some enhancements in Next.js 16, but the main one is definitely cache components. It's an opt-in feature. I would say that it mainly leverages the standard React suspense component and pattern and the way that I just show you, but what it enables is that you can have mixed content on a page. You can have static content, you can have cache content, and you can have dynamic content in a, like you could always have that, but in a more controlled and predictable way, I would say. So yeah, another use directive. We've had use server, use client, now we have use cache. There are others, you can search on Twitter and laugh. But what use cache allows is that you can put it on a full route, like on a page, and say like everything in here, just cache it. You know, I know what I'm doing, like your about page or whatever, that will always be static. But you can also put it inside individual functions, getting data, but also in functions in your own library, so you can like handle that somewhere else. And the pattern that sort of strays from what I shown before, that is a little bit different in Next.js 16, is that you, if you, instead of await the data that I showed in the page example, if you instead don't await it and you have the promise of the data, you can pass that to subcomponents. So what that enables is actually that when you send the promise, the unfinished loading of the data, the component can take that in and actually have the loading and the finished state side by side. You can see in the component exactly how it's going to look when it's loading and how it's going to look when it's resulting. So you can see the page.tsx and the loading.tsx. When a project gets big, it becomes sort of complicated to keep those in sync. Like what you do is go into your page and you're like, oh, I have H1 here, I have a div here, and you try to copy it and put in like sort of loading content, and then you change something on the main page and you forget about the loading, and the loading state just becomes ugly. So if you let each component own or be closer to the loading state, it's easier to maintain, in my experience. And it also enables for, in a way, easier for components to sort of own their own data. It's not a must, but in earlier Next versions, you usually go from the page, you load your main data, and you sort of drill it down. With the Next.js 16 and cache components, it's a little bit easier to let each component handle their own data and inject it down. And what it really does, like the bigger picture behind this, is that it unlocks partial pre-rendering in a much better way than before. Because it sees all the components you have, and it knows that these are in suspense, so I will show the initial suspense, but everything on the outside of these suspense boundaries are like completely predictive. You can see all your divs, your main, your whatever content you have, and it's just served directly, like a snapshot of that is served as soon and as quickly as possible to the user. So the partial pre-rendering makes the Next app extremely quick. Yeah, so the HTML is sent directly to the browser, and the dynamic content then loads when it's ready, but it's more isolated into your components in a very predictable way. So let's very quickly look at it. So we have our page again. We have get categories. That's a function. It can be in the same file. It can be in another file, however you want to structure your code. And you just tag it with use cache, and then Next will sprinkle magic dust on it. And there will never be cache conflicts between functions, for instance. And then you can have, like, you get the product from your product API, so you can be very flexible, and in there you control another level of caching if you want. So it gives a lot of flexibility, but you can see that I don't await these. These are promises. They're not materialized yet. So then you instead pass down your promise of categories and your promise of a product to these individual components. So category list, let's say the categories are like cached for a day or whatever, super performant, the product may be shorter. You can then in your category list accept a promise as attribute or as the parameter. And here you can see that then the whole component is wrapped in a suspense boundary, and you have the category list loading. You can have that under in the same file, so you can see like, okay, these two files look the same, the content looks the same. We pass in categories to the actual content, and in there we do the await. So like the category list actually now sort of owns its own loading state. You can look into it and see what is the truth of that content, and I find that very good, a very good pattern to use. Yeah, it's funny because Next.js documentation sort of uses an e-commerce website as an example to explain this cache component HTML shell, where it says like, okay, here the outer purple part, if the colors are visible well, that part will be like a static HTML, predictable HTML shell, and then it has entry points for like your cart and the recommended products. So, wrapping stuff up, where do we go from here? Some things to look into for the future that I didn't have time to cover. There's a lot of powerful things around metadata for SEO that is built in. That enables those kind of things. There's lazy loading for external packages. There's authentication, error handling, images, things like that. So those are things that you just get out of the box. If you don't like what you get out of the box, you can use something else, but it's nice to not have to think about like what library and what technologies should I use to optimize my images in different formats. Tailwind seems to be coming as standard. What I was left with when I did not get this presentation when I was told let's build a React e-commerce, but when I researched it more and got to learn all of this, I was thinking like, yeah, you know, we're a .NET company, like how could we have built this with .NET, and like to have the server side and client side by side in the same code base. Yeah, there's probably parallel technologies, but like it was hard to come up with a good alternative. So summary of what we've talked about. Data fetching is a very central concept in Next. Server-side fetching, security possible, caching possible, cache data, server-side caching, deduplicating request and invalidating cache. Extremely powerful when you need to have fast serve data, but also invalidate it quickly. We had page caching with static site generation pre-rendered, incremental static regeneration, where it behind the scenes updates a page without the user noticing, and the partial pre-rendering. And just in general, like state of the art, out of the box, full stack React, latest version of React, page performance, SEO optimized, and the React interactivity that you expect from a modern website, e-commerce, or other. So key takeaways, what Next is, it's a full stack framework, client server side code seamlessly in a single code base, turnkey functionality for full web development. It just works out of the box. When you created a new Next app, you have everything you need to build something really cool. Most things can be configured and opted out. It's powered by React. It's very React-centric. There's not many framework-specific lock-ins. There are a few. Some core Next.js concepts to learn, but not too many. Next tries to be intuitive by default. Failed sometimes historically, but they're getting there. Server-side first, which is, I like that. Some people are really angry who come from a old React environment. They're like, everything should be client-side. But I actually like that it defaults to server-side because it has its upsides. It's backed by Vercel, so you know it's not gonna die like Silverlight. And they're very highly motivated to keep innovating and leading the pack. They're actually like they're almost criticized for how close they're working with the React team driving the innovation there. That's it. Thank you.